Hello and welcome. Let's take a look at our top story. While Russia has been trying to gain influence all across Africa, it has reportedly launched special operations in Burkina Faso and its neighboring junta-ruled states of Mali and Niger. Now, these operations are not warlike tactics, but propaganda using media and cultural initiatives, like footballers listening to the Russian anthem before a match, graffiti artists painting Vladimir Putin's portrait on walls, and students being given friendship lessons on Russia and Africa. According to reports, these events are being promoted by African Initiative, a newly founded Russian media organization which claims to be an information bridge between Russia and Africa. The African Initiative allegedly uses media and cultural events to attract African journalists, influencers, and students. But several analysts say that it is believed to have links with the Russian security services and has former Wagner Group members as employees. The African Initiative has focused its activities in 3 junta-led countries, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. Now, these 3 countries have distanced themselves from the West, criticizing their failure to fight jihadist groups, insurgencies, and colonial legacies, and have instead pivoted towards Russia. The African Initiative also reportedly maintains a news website, video channel, and 5 Telegram channels. These platforms not just promote Russian Defense Ministry's paramilitary group Africa Corps, but also reportedly carries pro-Kremlin narrative and misleading information about the West, especially the United States. Now, some stories even suggested that the US is using Africa as a production and testing ground for bioweapons, and that the continent is becoming a testing ground for the Pentagon. In fact, in June, a group of bloggers and reporters from 8 African countries were invited for a 7-day tour to Russian-occupied parts of Ukraine. The journalists even visited the African Initiative headquarters in Moscow. Apart from media tours, the African Initiative has been involved in community outreach in the Sahel to boost Russia's image. Now, these measures include distributing groceries, screening Wagner documentaries, city cleaning drives, and first aid training. All of these, which messages on how Russia is the partner that Africa needs. Earlier this year, Washington called out the Kremlin's efforts to spread disinformation in Africa through this initiative. The U.S. State Department said that one of the African Initiative's first major campaigns was to target U.S. and Western health initiatives in Africa. It also accused Russia of spreading conspiracies about Western pharmaceutical companies. While Russia continues to build bridges to African nations, US-led West is struggling to hold on to its role and is facing rejection, especially by the junta-ruled countries. Can the West, especially the United States, puncture Putin's propaganda? Now, for more on this, we have with us Ambrose Igboke, a global affairs analyst who is joining us live from Enugu in Nigeria. Thank you for being with us.
Good afternoon, Alyson. I'm glad to be here on the show.
Great to speak to you again. Now, what are these primary motivations behind Russia's increased influence and these social initiatives through propaganda in Burkina Faso? And how does it align with their broader strategic interests in Africa?
I will go a little bit historical. In 1885, in Berlin, Germany, some powers of the world came together, especially European countries, to do what we call the partitioning of Africa, where Africa was ceded to the countries for them to rule as colonialists. Later, Russia also caught up with some of the African countries. France, Britain, Belgium, and maybe some of the Dutch maybe got some piece of Africa to rule over as colonial masters. But after the Second World War, during the Cold War, when the Soviet Union and America were having a Cold War, Soviet Union made some inroads into Africa after the independence of some African nations. So in the 70s, we had the Soviet Union that time making inroads into some African countries. Even Nigeria had a very strong relationships with the Soviet Union, especially the government of Murtala Mohammed. When you come to Nigeria, for example, you have the steel plants in Ajaokuta and the Warri that's built by the Russians. I think the National Theatre was also built by the Russians. And so Russia has been having it with African companies for a while. Remember former Burkina Faso in the early 80s had a relationship with Russia. Captain Thomas Sankara, who was a former leader of Burkina Faso, who was assassinated, had a very close relationship with Russia. So when the Soviet Union fell in 1991, basically they lost grip because, of course, the countries made up the Soviet Union, scattered and disintegrated into splinter countries. But so Russia now lost the grip, and the West took over. Talking about America, talking about France and Britain, and they have been the driver's seat. But what had happened in the last 30 years was that more and more African countries became disenfranchised, according to, especially when it concerns their leadership in their country, how to exploit their minerals in terms of trade. So they became disadvantaged, and all came to a head just last year because of the coups and counter coups that happened in these three countries. So Russia is trying to reinvent itself. I think because of the war that is going on in Ukraine, Russia is increasingly isolated. So Russia is looking for outlets to be able to forge more partnerships with countries. Yes. So the coup that happened last year became very, very open and became an opportunity for Russia to actually dig in. And that is what they have done.
Right. And Ambrose, how has the local population in these junta-led regions responded to the presence of this Russian Africa initiative that supposedly even employs Wagner military personnel? What impact has this had on the country's internal dynamics?
Well, for the internal dynamics, I think they're just being excited. There are no real solid achievements so far. It's still too early to judge that. But for now, I think the people are just too tired of the French manipulation of their economy and governance. And for them, there's so little opportunity to try another world leader. But I think it's just, there's no emancipation anywhere. It's a matter of changing one slave master for another slave master. Because at the end of the day, they are all slave masters, be it France, be it America, be it Britain, and be it Russia. Because why they are coming to Burkina Faso is to exploit the economic benefits of the Burkinabes. That is why they are there. They're not there for charity. They are not there to make the people happier. They are just there to exploit. Maybe their tactics may be different from that of the French. The Burkinabes may find it more welcoming. That is just the difference. Maybe they may negotiate better because the French almost took everything from their former colonies. They didn't have a central bank, the gendarmes, everything was controlled from Paris. But I think Russia may learn from that mistake and be able to open up more, maybe to have more trade balance, maybe profits in the exploitation of the solid minerals they have there. Maybe the trade balance will now be profits, let them take some profits instead of owning the thing and giving back the country whatever pittance they want to give. So for me, I think the Burkinabes are excited about new opportunities. But what these opportunities will bring is what is not clear yet because it's too early to judge.
Right. And Ambrose, you have touched on this, but in what ways has Russia's involvement in, especially Burkina Faso, then influenced the geopolitical landscape of the Sahel region, particularly in relation to the foreign powers like you've mentioned, like France and the United States?
Yeah, it's going to change the dynamics because other countries are watching, especially former French colonies. They are watching keenly in what is happening in those three countries. And if there's a paradigm shift that is progressive, that is beneficial to these three countries, then other countries of the region, the Sahel region, will try to tend to change partnerships as well. Because the truth, in the last 60 years of African independence, the French colony, former colonies, are not doing good. They are not doing better. I mean, the France is too much in control of what is happening in those countries, and there's no breather. And I think Russia is coming back again to reassert is, during the time of the apartheid, Russia also had some inroad into the Sahel region and into South Africa region and that time. So I think Russia is coming back to reestablish that relationship, and Russia is ready to do away and sacrifice a lot to be able to buy at least the trust of these African countries. And then disinformation in the media it's always been part of the game, right from the days, even from America, from France, from Britain. All of them have these big news agencies that send disinformation to Africa and try to make Africa look as if they are coming to help Africa, and meanwhile they are coming to exploit Africa. So disinformation is a game that will continue, and it's not going to stop now. So Russia is just employing an old tactics that is being deployed by the rest of the world, especially US and Britain.
Right. Ambrose, thank you very much for being with us on Firstpost Africa and for your valued insights and analysis.
Thank you very much, Alyson, for having me on the show today.